All right, we are live here with Tom Harris, a renowned architectural photographer based in Chicago, Illinois. Thank you for joining us, Tom.
Yeah, glad to be
This is
here.
the first time we've ever done this. Hopefully the kinks worked out right now.
Yep.
But first time we've ever done this. I'm in Puerto Rico. Tom's in Chicago. We're going to see how it goes. We're going to have a nice little chat here. We got some people already saying hello, watching from Chile. I love to hear it.
Yeah.
So like I said, yeah, Tom is a photographer from Chicago. He works for some amazing clients, shooting everything from homes to high rises. And I've been sort of following him on Instagram for a couple of years. And we started
Instant
talking to one
flirting.
another, like I want to say a year ago or so. And we just make sarcastic comments back and forth all the time. And we've kind of been talking about the industry and shooting and technique and gossiping. And Tom came to me with the idea. He's like, hey, man, would you want to do some kind of live event and see how it goes on YouTube? And so here we are. We spent the last couple of days getting set up and fielding some questions. And we would like to kick it off. So, Tom, I'll let you tell the people who you are. And I'm going to pull up your work while you talk, and I'll do a light scroll.
Okay. A light scroll
through your work while we talk about you.
Great. Yeah, and just to reiterate, I've been following Mike for a while on Instagram, and he's one of the best, busiest guys in the country, and it's really fun to have somebody to talk to. I used to work at a architectural photography firm, and I had lots of interaction with other architectural photographers, and I miss that. So Instagram is kind of my outlet now for that. I talked to a few people, and Mike is definitely one of the best guys out there. So I'm happy to be here with you today. So like Mike said, my name is Tom Harris. I've been doing this professionally now for I don't know, about 10 years, and I work. I do about 100 shoots a year in a non-COVID year. It's been a little slower this year, of course. Yeah, last year was 117 shoots, and it looks like this year it's going to be about 59. So a lot slower, but that's all right. But yeah, I have the pleasure and luxury of working with a lot of the greatest architects around, and Chicago is such a great architecture city. There's so many firms based here, both small and large. You've got the huge Skidmore, Owings and Merrills, and then you've got a range of other sizes of firms, all the way down to little boutique firms that do wonderful work. Like this one on the screen is Ashley Osborne. She's a one-person operation. She does fantastic work. But yeah, so that's who I am. I'm here out of Chicago doing what I can. And Mike, why don't you give the people who aren't as familiar with you a little rundown of what you do?
So yeah, similar to Tom, I don't live in Chicago, but I do photograph architecture. I'm based in Los Angeles, and I've been doing this for about 10 years now. What I think is interesting about Tom and I, he started out in a very different path than I sort of did. And, we kind of got to the same place, but had two completely divergent, completely separate sort of origin stories. But we'll get to that in a minute. But in any case, yeah, I work predominantly in Los Angeles, and I used to travel all over the world, and I haven't really traveled at all this year for shooting. I did one shoot in Rhode Island, and I'm here in Puerto Rico now. I was filming with the F-Stoppers guys they run their blog of down here for a little bit. And yeah, I mean, I usually do about 60 to 70 shoot days a year, and I think this year it's probably been, I want to say 35 to 40. I had a back surgery in January that put me out for 6 months, and then that happened and COVID together. So my whole six months are just went poof.
Did you mess your back up carrying photo gear around?
I made it worse, that's for sure. But I originally hurt it snowboarding in 2009, and I had a minor herniation that just got way, way worse than it should have been. Because I did not take my doctor's advice and stop carrying heavy things. So if you're one of those photographers that has 8 Pelican cases full of lights, you might want to reconsider that before you end up like me. So
yeah, or all of us actually. Yeah, pretty much.
But speaking of, we want to talk a little bit about, first of all, I want to talk about a little bit more about your origin story compared to mine. So you started working at Hedrick Blessing, and if you guys don't know, they were and somewhat are, I don't know what the correct terminology for that is.
Yeah, that's fair.
They were yeah, one of the most like esteemed architectural photography studios in the world almost, right? And they were based in Chicago. They did a lot of corporate architecture stuff for SOM and ZGF and many big firms all over the place. And I think they had 5 or 6 shooters. And the program, correct me if I'm wrong, was there were these sort of headline shooters, like the headlined acts, and then they would have assistants, and they would train the assistants to go on camera.
Correct.
And you would get the experience traveling to Dubai and Europe and Australia and Saudi Arabia and Indonesia, wherever, all the time as an assistant, and work your way up until you became on camera, so to say.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah. I can pick it up from there. Yeah. So I went to school, got a BFA at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, up a couple hours north of here. And when I was done, well, actually in school, I hung out with the architecture students because I found in general that they took photography a little more seriously than the art students did. So I made fast friends with a bunch of them. And through them, I learned about the studio in Chicago, Hedrick Blessing. And so when I was done with school, my now wife, girlfriend at the time, she was graduating from the architecture program. I was graduating from the photo program. We moved down to Chicago with the hopes of getting jobs, myself at Hedrick Blessing and her at an architecture firm. In 2008, super awesome time to graduate and try to get jobs.
That was 2009, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, recession. So super fun. But I eventually did. It took a couple months of, a few months of waiting. But I did get hired as an apprentice at Hedrick Blessing. And like you said, there was around 6 photographers there when I arrived. It was Nick Merrick and John Miller and Steve Hall, and then there was Kate Joyce, Craig Dugan, Scott McDonald, and Dave Burke. So I got to assist all of those guys for around 3.5 years. Steve Hall was my primary mentor. I was with him on every shoot that he was on. I was probably on, I don't know, in those 4 years or 3.5 years, I was probably on, close to 400 shoots with those guys. So I would, it was wild, the life. I mean, I was primarily with Steve, but then I would kind of fan out whenever anyone needed somebody. So I would oftentimes be on shoots, 14 days straight. Some days, like I think my longest stretch was 29 days in a row where I was on the shoot, which is exhausting. But when you're in your early 20s, you can go pretty hard. But it was really amazing because I got to learn both the strengths and the weaknesses of all the different photographers there. So the studio had been around since 1929. So it had been around for 80 years when I got there. And every photographer there began as an apprentice and assisted themselves. So it's a really amazing place to work because it's all about mentorship. And, they used to talk about keeping the studio young, and that's how they survived, was they learned from their youngest, apprentices, and they in turn got to learn from the masters there that had been, mastering their craft for so many years. And it was an amazing place to work. I eventually did go on camera. I was the 23rd photographer only in 80 years or whatever it was, 80 something years. So that was a pretty high honor there.
I feel like there's more talent in that firm than my pinky, honestly.
Yeah, there was a lot of talent. Everybody kind of had their, specialties and it was a wonderful place to work because you'd be, we all had a big line of desks basically in the studio, and we would all be, in and out of shoots working on our monitors, and you'd have people coming by and they'd stop and look over your shoulder and say, hey, how'd you like that? Or what'd you do there? Or, how come you didn't consider opening that blind or popping a light back there? And it's just a really wonderful place to work when you have that much kind of oversight over what you're doing, and then you can look at their work and talk to them, and you're all on the same team, which is really nice. And I think that's something we want to talk about later, is how architectural photography and photography in general tends to be a pretty adversarial thing, and competitive thing. And it's rare that you can have a relationship like ours is beginning to be, where it can possibly be more collaborative and supportive, which I think is something we all need to do a little bit more of. But so from there, I was on camera for about 3.5 years, and regrettably, the studio had been shrinking through a few different, unfortunately timed events like the recession, and honestly, the the gulf between a really high end photographer like Ezra Stoller or one of the Hedrick Blessing folks used to be so great because the team needed to be so robust to be able to do it. Back in the day when they used to shoot corporate interiors, they used to bring thousands of sheets of pink tissue paper, and they would take the fluorescent tubes out of all of the tubes in the ceiling and gel wrap them in pink tissue paper and put them back in before they made a shot. They'd make 3 pictures a night, you know? So, you know, they used to take it very seriously, get all the light perfect, everything. And then, you know, as things got a little bit, I don't want to say easier, but a little bit easier, you know, you can make an image that's pretty close to being not perfection, but you know, you can get close for a lot less investment now. So between those few things, and just some like unfortunate people leaving, the studio was dwindling, and I always wanted to become a partner there even before I had applied. And I realized that in order to do that, I was going to have to basically buy out 3 partners because I was the only young guy left. And I couldn't wait.
They almost ran it like an architectural firm, right? With the partners and different roles in a very rigid sort of structure.
There's partners, photographers. The partners were photographers mostly, but and then there was a, you know, production manager, a retoucher, and then there was apprentices. So so I left. I was actually one of the harder things I've ever had to do because I had a really good relationship with those people, and to leave them when they had kind of taught me everything I knew was hard for me to do. In fact, I couldn't do it in person. I had to write them all a letter of resignation and drop it on their desks at the end of the day and walk out because I knew I wouldn't be able to. And then I'd say, hey, we can talk about this tomorrow, you know. But yeah, so I did that, and that was 2016 spring. So it's been 4 years and change, and man, I haven't looked back. I've just been super busy, and you know, I have an apprentice of my own now. His name's Brian. He's great. He's been with me almost the entire time, and I've been able to kind of, you know, teach him his craft. He kind of specializes in even smaller wedge of the pie. He does art documentation and art galleries, but he's extremely meticulous and good at it. So it's been fun to kind of, you know, give him the tools he needs to succeed in that field. And he's getting close to kind of leaving the nest, and I'll be looking for a new apprentice at that point. And so there's my way was very rigid and like, you know, mentorships. How about you? What about you?
I mean, I don't even know what to say. Like I basically stumbled into this. Then there's no history behind where I came from, and
that's the beauty of photography, though.
Right? Yeah, right. And it was just sort of this. Hi, Pella. I'm also in Puerto Rico. It was just sort of the beauty of this sort of, you know, spontaneous thing. I owned a camera. I was always interested in art. I majored in environmental studies, environmental science, like the sort of hybrid major. And that was my planned real way to make money. But I minored in studio art and music. It was a kind of a concurrent minor, just because I was like, I'm paying up for all this college. I might as well get as much as I can out of it.
Okay.
And I was living in California, hurt myself snowboarding, met a wonderful woman who, like, after I hurt myself, she was the first person I talked to, like in the emergency room type of thing. And she was like, oh, I'm a developer, or I work for a developer up in one of the mountains up here. Can you take pictures of houses? And I was like, yeah, how hard can that be?
Wait a minute. You met her in the emergency room?
Yeah, it was literally like flagging down an ambulance type of thing. It was this crazy.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we exchanged information there, and she called me a couple of weeks later, and there was this amazing like $6 million vacation home in Tahoe, and she just basically turned me loose on it and left. And she was like, all right, have fun. And I shot that, and that was the more money than I had ever made in as short of a period of time ever before in my life. And I was like, this is going to be my career. She gave me $200. I spent 4 hours photographing this house, and I was like, that's it. I'm doing this. I don't care. And so it just kind of snowballed. I stayed up in the Tahoe area for a year or two after that. It was 10 years ago. So, and then I just decided I'm done snowboarding. I'm done getting hurt. I'm going to Los Angeles, and boom, I just kept sort of on the grind. And it's kind of crazy to me that I say that like so flippantly, but how much things have changed since I would literally like, you know, take a piece of paper and knock on an architecture firm's door and say, hey, do you need photos? And but like that's what I had to do. You know what I mean? I didn't know a soul in Los Angeles. I didn't have any connections. I was like, oh, that's an artistic place. I should go live there and photograph homes. It was just this one lucky break after another type of thing at the beginning. And it seemed like all the sort of dominoes fell the right way. But yeah, I mean, I sort of taught myself. I never assisted anyone. I think I've assisted friends of mine, like as a haha for fun type of thing.
Yeah, sure.
Because they might be in LA and I'm not doing anything, and they're like, hey, you want to come help me do this house? And you know, that sort of thing. Like if you came to LA and you were like, can you assist me? I'd be like, hell yeah, I'm there. You know, and then we'll go get beers after and have a good time. But there was never any formal learning process. I had to figure everything out through the internet, through forums. I remember it was like luminous landscapes and photography on the net and all of these sort of like in the boom period, maybe 09 to 2012 of digital photography, when things were really starting to take off. And people were super duper, like just really interested. Cameras were evolving super quick. Digital processing was evolving really quick. And that's probably about the same time that Hedrick Blessing started to be like, oh crap, we don't have to gel every single fluorescent light. We can just do the tint saturation thing in post-production.
It became a really interesting time at Hedrick Blessing because in the past, assistants were learned from, but in a much smaller bandwidth, you know. And during that time, it was just like a really big two-way street because every new assistant that came in had been trained in the most recent technology, you know. So.
Yeah, and I also think my timing was very fortuitous because I studied, part of my degree was digital art. And so I learned like Photoshop CS2 and CS3 in college, right? And once you set that foundation, you're good to go, you know? So before we go on, we have a couple great reader questions here.
Yeah, let's do it.
Number one, what is the story of that Iraq map behind you?
Oh, behind me. Yeah, that is. So this is a piece by a Chicago artist named Amanda Williams. She's a client of mine, actually. I traded her a photo shoot for this piece. I shot her show at the MCA, the Museum of Contemporary Art here in Chicago. It's called Auburn Gresham is Iraq. So this was back from the, I feel like I should have like read her exact bio because I don't want to get this wrong. But this was back during the whole like Chirac thing and that more people were dying in Chicago over the span of a year than in the war in Iraq. So more Americans were dying, I should specify. But so she did this whole series. She's an architect by training, and she did this whole series where she would take maps and overlay them with this laser cutting technique, and they're just super beautiful. So this is a map of Iraq overlaid over the city grid of Auburn Gresham. So it's just kind of like a commentary on the you know, the numbers there, I guess, during that
Very
time.
Cool.
Yes. Beautiful.
Yeah, really, someone with eagle eyes in the comments. I mean, they might be from there or something, but
sure.
I was like,
she's a very talented artist. Amanda is, and I'm consider myself very lucky to be able to work with her. So we work together in the Biennale in Italy and things too. So go ahead.
Cool. Well, I'm a huge map nerd, so I had to ask when I saw that pop up. Miriam Heradfer asks, would you say the area is so competitive that one needs a fine art degree or background to get started? I'm going to say unequivocally no. I don't think you need a degree. No. I think that's a huge waste of money, honestly.
My mentor at Hedrick Blessing, his major was geology. So Steve Hall was a geologist by training, and he got an apprenticeship at Hedrick Blessing because his neighbor was Jim Hedrick. So that's how that went back in the day. But no, I would agree. I think, one of my close friends named Alex Noriega, he's a pretty famous landscape photographer at this point, and he has no formal training either. He was my roommate in college. He had no interest in photography at the time. He dropped out of school, and he just dove super deep into the medium. He became an expert in post-production, and he was enthusiastic. I think that's, Mike, you kind of spoke to your luck earlier, which I was kind of like rolling my eyes a little, because I think you make your own luck. Everybody can get an opportunity. It's what you do with that opportunity that matters. So, the fact that she gave you a chance and you went out and you did a good job, and then you like took that, you're like a dog with a bone. It looks like, you know, like you took it and ran with it, and you were like, I'm going to stay here. I'm going to do this a whole bunch. I'm going to get good at it, you know? So I don't think you need a degree in it.
If you're always out there looking for the next break, you're going to see it rather than someone who's just not, who's sequestered in their basement like me right now. So,
yeah. And I think that, you know, there's value to going to school for photography. Only in that, well, you get instruction and you have peers. That's great. You can find that elsewhere, but it is nice to have it all in one place. But what it really does is it takes 3 years or 4 years or 2 years, however long your program is, and it forces you to only focus on mastering your craft and creating your look and your vision. And that's what's important. If you can, you know, find a way to do that in a self-sufficient way away from a school, you can become an excellent photographer, you know, in another way too. As long as you're like, you have to be severely committed to it, though. You know.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, I think it's a hard no from us.
Yeah, agreed.
So,
but it doesn't. I mean, it can help though.
Yeah, definitely. But moving on. So we get a ton of questions about equipment, and this is again kind of in the vein. Like every time I ask questions, I'm like, ask me anything, and it's like, what camera do you use? What lens do you use? Can I use this camera? Can I use that camera? Do I need these lights? Do I need this computer? I'm like, God.
I agree. Yeah.
And so, I mean, I think we use the same setup, like Canon 5DSR with the tilt shift lenses. Yeah. And I have the same tripod too. I didn't know that.
I have these 3 lenses. That's it. That's all.
I have the 17, the 24, and the 50.
Boom. 50, and 17, 24.
I use the extender. Do you use the extender?
No.
You don't use the extender? I love the extender, because then you can get like a 35 millimeter tilt shift.
I need a 35 bad. I should do that. Yes. So gear doesn't really matter. The only thing that matters is that your gear can do what you need it to do. There's no like right thing to use. If you're going to shoot architecture, your lines need to be straight. Period. You can break the rules, but you need to start there, you know,
right.
Like, so you need to either become adept at being able to frame a tilted shot and being able to see what it's going to look like when it's perspective corrected, or you need to get tilt shift lenses, or you need to use a view camera. Those are the kind of 3 ways to do that, right?
Those are your options.
It doesn't really matter. Image quality matters, yes, but it doesn't, at this point, everything's good. Really.
What do you think of people who say, I need medium format, it has a look that I can't get with a DSLR?
So I shot an Arca Swiss view camera with a P4.5, a phase digital back on it for 4 years. That's what I used when I was at Hedrick Blessing. And it was great. I mean, it was slow, it was methodical, it made you think. You can do all those things by yourself. You can slow down, be methodical, and stop to think. It had disadvantages, like it was slow. You couldn't, when people were involved, you had to wake the camera up with a cable, you know? So like you had a little tiny window where you had to wake up the back and then release the shutter, or it would 2-shoot error and stuff. You know, I'm sure there's better ones than that now, but they do have a look. It's good. Like if you want to do it, then do it. You don't have to, like, it doesn't matter. I mean, just, you can get the same look by using this camera too, if you're conscious about it. It doesn't matter. Nothing matters.
Yeah. And I do get some comments on Instagram that look like, did you shoot this with a phase? And I just want to say yes.
just every time, just no matter what they ask. Yeah, I did. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like the moon was in a phase when I photographed this. So yes, it was in phase. But I think a lot more, I have a theory that people who, not all, I know that there are rich dentists who buy expensive cameras, that's fine. Mm-hmm. I think people who are ready to commit 60 grand or 10 or whatever, I know people who go, you can get them used for $3,000. I think people who are at the point where they're buying those cameras, they're good enough at photography to recognize good light when they see it.
Yeah, that's what matters.
That's what matters, more so than, you know, wrangling a file in post-production. Like bad light's gonna look like bad light if you shoot it on the most expensive medium format digital back.
Yeah, and there are slight advantages to some cameras that have a stop more dynamic range or this or that, you know, but again, it's all within, like, you get 96% of the way there, and then the other 4% you can spend another $60,000 if you want, or you can't, or it doesn't really matter. I want to stress this, like, the image is ultimately what's the most important thing, right? So however you get there and make it the best it can be is what matters. It doesn't, you know, however you do that is good, you know? Yeah, that's basically what I want to say is it doesn't matter how you get there. It's just the fact that you get there.
The master has spoken. Okay. So, I mean, I think we're like, I was shocked to see you have that same exact setup and even the same thing.
You have the biggest really right stuff one, the one that gets ridiculously high.
No, I don't want to deal with that because it doesn't fit in a checked bag.
Yeah, mine. So I have a smaller one I use for when I'm checking it. So I have
I have the TVC 33, and it's actually with the
I don't know the number because I'm not a nerd.
It's so damn heavy that like it hurts me in my surgerized back, if you will, to carry the thing. So I try to keep it light. So anyway,
no, and that's good. That's the right answer.
Yeah,
I just like that this thing's pretty light still, and it can shoot over fences. And
yeah, it's a piece of cake, right?
Yeah.
We do have a couple good questions. Christian Santiago, going back before we move on, 2 steps forward, 1 step back here. Christian Santiago wants to know, how did you go about getting your own clients when you left your job at the firm?
Yeah, okay. So that's a good question. I was lucky in that there was no non-compete, and I had developed relationships with people that valued my eye more than they valued the name of the firm. So the relationships that I've developed were strong enough to follow me when I left the firm. So when I began working at Hedrick Blessing, or when I began on camera, I ended up with a lot of projects that either photographers didn't really want to do or that they were too busy to do. So, you know, there'd be overflow. Somebody would get booked for a thing and they'd have to travel for it. And then some local client would say, hey, we've got a project that's opening on Thursday and we have to have it shot between Tuesday and Thursday because that's when whatever, there's all kinds of nonsense with architecture. But so, you know, they'd say, well, you know, I can't do it, but we've got this great new guy. His name's Tom. Here's his portfolio. We're going to guarantee his work, which means, you know, if he screws up, we're going to come back and shoot it with another photographer for you and not charge you for it, basically. Yeah. And that never happened, of course. But so that's how I began to get clients. The other thing is I had been an apprentice for 3.5 years, like I said. So, you know, there's a guy, Tom Lee, who's watching right now. Tom Lee was, he was John Ronan's kind of #2 guy on the Poetry Foundation, a big important project that got the cover arc record and stuff. And I was an apprentice, and my mentor, Steve Hall, was shooting the building, and John Ronan was there, and Tom was there. And Tom and I were the guys like moving the 300-pound steel bench. And we were the guys like, there was these big, beautiful reveals between the concrete, and we were smashing the cables down in the reveals so that they would be hidden in the photo so we could light it properly and stuff. So, you know, Tom and I were running around the whole time, and we developed a bond. And then, you know, eventually Tom left and he became the design director at HDR in Chicago. And there you go, you know, there's a client because we spent time and we developed a relationship together. That happened, you know, 40 other times too, where I would be working with young architects who eventually were in a position to say, I think that we should use this architectural photographer because, you know, this is a project that I've worked on and I want to be, you know, part of that process. So, you know, pretty much all my clients are friendly, if not actual friends that I have over for dinner and stuff at this point. So that's how I was able to get clients when I left. And then we're going to go into more about that later, but you know.
Well, I mean, that actually segues perfectly. Something we want to talk about was our client relationships and how we both, I think we have similar business models in that we have like a group of 4 or 5 core clients who we could get a lunch, a beer or whatever with, and you know, I know about their children, I know about their dogs.
Tom Lee is texting me about the bench right now, so there you go, he's watching.
And we have like a core base of clients, and those are the relationships that I would die for, right?
Absolutely.
They fund my retirement account kind of thing. And they've been there for years and years, and then you sort of have clients that you might do 1 or 2 shoots a year with. And I don't know what these numbers are for you, but I definitely feel like I have clients that are near and dear to my heart that I would take a bullet for. And then you have clients that come 1 to 2 a year, and then you have clients that you work with once and you never again.
Sure.
I don't know about you.
No, this is accurate.
But yeah, I mean, and that's kind of, I think the beauty of this business is the ability to sort of curate your own clients.
Yeah.
And I know that even if I got to the point
lucky
where
enough to be successful, you know, like you definitely can.
And I do feel that like there's a loyalty that sort of goes both ways. I definitely make sure that I leave time for my most loyal clients who have been there for 5 years. And, you know, I don't expect, but I also kind of know that they are waiting for my availability to open up, and they'll sort of give me enough lead time to say, hey, we've got this crazy project coming online 6 months from now. Make sure you carve out a few days, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah, I have those clients too that, you know, I basically tell them like, hey, it looks like your building's getting close. You know, I'd recommend these days, and they're like, go do it. And then those are the same clients though that are like, they call me up and they're like, hey, do you have any plans for tomorrow at 4 a.m.?
I get the same thing.
You know, like,
I need one picture, go over there.
Please, like we have a deadline, and we don't have this picture or something, and those are the clients you're like, absolutely, you know, I'll jump up and run at dawn for it. And I mean, client relationships are super important. I'm going to go back to my time at Hedrick Blessing. There was a few photographers. There was kind of an old school genre of photographers that were kind of prima donna-ish. And, you know, what they said went, and, you know, you hired them, they came on a shoot, they told you what the shots were going to be. They were kind of the star. And some clients liked that. Maybe not a lot, but some did. They were successful because they were good. But the problem was when recessions came, the photographers, like my mentor, Steve, who treated every client like they were their most important client, were the ones who stayed busy, because all those clients that you talked about that only came around once a year still came around once a year, you know?
Right.
Whereas the guys who had 3 big clients, and they were the big shots that shot for those guys, like those huge firms, like the budgets get crushed and they can't afford it during a recession, and they're just going to sit on that. Whereas the little firms, sometimes they're like, you know, we just got this little jewel box project done. It's all we have. We really need to market. So, you know, I think, you know, the way I look at it, honestly, is that no matter what the project is, the people working on it spent 2 years of their life or more making it as good as it could be.
The least we can do is show up and
yes,
that's it for that.
I was taught you walk into every job like it's the best thing you ever saw, and I try to do that. It's hard sometimes to do that, but I try to do it, you know, like I try, there's no job where I'm not like, oh, you know what, forget about the dawn shot. Like, that's not that good a job. I'd rather sleep in. We'll just go get some pretty good stuff, you know, like we're there an hour before dawn getting set up, and it doesn't matter if it's a high rise or an apartment, you know, it's important to give it the same amount of respect, you know. So.
Well, what I do think I have found, you know, while there's definitely projects that it might not even be the architect's fault. Maybe they have a developer who's pinching pennies, or a client who doesn't know what they want.
All the time.
Tweak 7 times.
Value engineering. Yeah.
There's always at least one amazing picture that I can get excited about.
Agreed.
Even if I'm shooting empty warehouses 100%. Or empty homes, there's always one thing where I'm like, oh, this 100%. Is cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I find that like if I don't find that, I haven't dug hard enough. And like I will literally, I'll just ask my assistant, I'll walk away from the camera for 10 minutes and I'll just be like, oh my God. And I'll go, you know, maybe we'll go get a coffee break, and I'll come back and I'm like, I see it now. There's the shot.
Sure.
And, you know, I'll pace back and forth and I'm like, dig. There is a shot here. Where is it? Rather than just put the camera in the corner and say, all right, that's it. If you dig a little bit, like you can always sort of, I think clients really appreciate that when, you know, it might not be their favorite project. They might have mailed it in, but you're able to sort of chisel something out, you know?
Yeah.
Really
we
cool.
called it elevating the design, right? Like, if you can look at what's there and try to find what the design intent was, which was almost always better than what reality is, you know, because there's things in the world that have to happen and budgets and things. But, but you know, if you can get there and leave and when they get the set, they're like, these look better than the space really is. You know, when you hear that, you know, you've done them justice and done a good job.
So no, every client relationship, you know, I always try or do my best to sort of find those angles and dig something out. And I love your advice about, treat every job like it's the best house or best building or best whatever that you've ever seen.
Right.
Because there's always something really cool about every project. Otherwise, why would they hire an architect?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So.
Right. No, it's a good point. Yeah.
Right. So, all right, let's see here. We have a couple of questions that have popped up. Okay. What's the craziest story? We don't need to go into there. Buy my book for the craziest story ever.
There you go. Do that.
So let's see here. How would you say, if you are the largest real estate shooter in an area doing the most commercial work, how would you get out of that and start to market to more commercial clients when that sort of thing is a new concept in an area? Like in Chicago, New York, LA, everyone knows what architectural photography is. If you're in Alabama, for example, would you, I would almost consider, like,
I know some pretty good architects in Alabama. Be careful.
How would you go about making inroads down there? Hypothetically, it could be any state.
Yeah.
And there's great architecture everywhere. It's just you might have to just drive a little bit further. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Cover more ground.
My philosophy is always that the work should do the work. Like the work should speak for itself, and the work should get you the job. Like, if you need to make an inroad, like. And there's no like example of it in your market, find a way to do one, right? And then show them the product, right? And say like, this is how I want to elevate this photography. Like you're doing all this no lighting, 14 millimeters, stick it in a corner, see every wall stuff.
Yeah.
And like, we need to like, give this the same respect that a project that's in New York City would get. I think that if the images are good enough, they're going to come to you. You shouldn't have to go to them, right? You need to find a way to make them see it, but that's my only advice there is like, yeah, I understand like these silos that we put photography in, like real estate and commercial and architectural, or but ultimately it's the built environment that you're looking at, right? So you don't have to do a worse job because it's real estate photography. Yeah, like
I shoot real estate. Like some of my the highest end work I do is $60 million homes, and I'm $5-6 grand a day. It's real estate. It's not like I'm doing a crappy job because it's real estate. I'm not showing up to a home and standing in a corner and I approach it as if it were an architectural photo shoot, because that's what it is.
That's
and there's multiple clients, and I'm trying to make it look as good as I possibly can. So, I love your answer. But moving on. So again, it sort of ties in with this question, which is why I chose it.
Yeah.
What is your general approach to business in terms of the juicy stuff? Day rate, hourly? Are you doing post-production fees, licensing? How are you charging for retouching, that sort of thing?
Yeah. So when I started my business, I kind of decided I wanted to keep my focus on the photography. So I wanted to simplify everything as much as I could, right? So I have a hourly rate that goes until you hit 8 hours. After that, it's a day. Okay. So if you have a 6-hour photo shoot, it's less than a 7-hour photo shoot. It's less than an 8-hour photo shoot. 8 hours to 16 hours, 20 hours, whatever. It's all a day, right? So it ramps up pretty quickly to that, and then that's a day rate. And then, but it allows me to shoot for little clients that have little jobs, right? I don't want to write off these great young firms that are doing little projects in Marina City.
I'm learning right now. I'm taking notes.
And it's fair for me, it's fair for them. So I never do a 2-hour photo shoot though. I'm just going to say that, like, there's never a time where I'm going to do that, really, unless it's like one of my huge clients and they just need one little thing. And they're like, hey, when you get a chance, stop by, shoot a shot. Yeah, I'll make it worth everyone's while. But, and then, so there's a day rate. And then beyond that, there's a per image cost. So if we do, an 8-hour day, that's where I save myself with a 20-hour day, right? It's like, if we shoot 10 images in an 8-hour day and we shoot, 16 images in a 16-hour day, then there's more money to be made there. But it's still fair because the budget just doesn't keep going hourly forever. And then expenses on top of that. So my assistant is billed to the client. My gas and parking is billed to the client. That's it. So there's three categories.
So I just do a day rate, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm glad we're talking about this because I'm like doing some mental math in my head. I'm like, how can I incorporate some hourly stuff? I don't bill for my assistant.
Okay.
I feel like, now I think you could go either way, but I kind of feel like I don't want the client being like, yeah, it's an easy job. Can you just show up and do it? Do you really need an assistant? Mm-hmm. And I'm kind of at the point where I'm like, the assistant isn't just there to haul my gear. Mm-hmm. It's sort of like, it makes the job fun to some degree. And yes, like if the client wants one picture of an exterior facade, I'll just drive over there and pop out and like take it. But if we're going to be moving stuff around, I'm like, the assistant's got to come, even though it's a half day. So I don't bill for it. I just kind of roll my assistant into the day rate.
Sure.
And of course, expenses and parking, gas tolls, mileage, all that stuff on top, or flights and hotels and whatnot.
Yeah.
So you bill a post-production fee as well, right?
Per image, so that's the per image fee. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that covers my time in Photoshop. Yeah.
Okay. And do you do, like, if a client comes back and they're like, can you take out all these telephone poles? Mm-hmm. Is that something you do for free, or do you have like I call it an altering reality fee?
Yeah.
And it kind of is an arbitrary line when I start to charge it. I'll be honest. Like yeah. I mean, it's a hard ridiculous request.
Yes.
It's like, I got to charge for this because I need to go take a back plate and skew it in, or I got to go back and get a clear sky and replace that.
Yeah. So the line for me kind of comes when it comes on a whole job basis, right? So if we have a 20-shot job and there's 2 images that are like pretty heavy on removals, like there's some power lines in front of the building and I got to knock those out, but the other 18 are like photographic retouching, which is what you should be doing. Yeah, I'll just eat it. You know what I mean? I won't eat it. It's just it's I kind of figure there's a half an hour to an hour per shot or whatever it is, right? And it's like, oh well, these are all taking me 12 minutes, 18 minutes, 16 minutes. This one's going to take me an hour and a half, like whatever, right? But like I just did a shoot that I'm not done with. We did 2 days and then we're going to do 1 day here next week. And it's a corporate interiors project. And the retouching was pretty heavy, not totally crazy, but pretty heavy. But the client's client, the architecture firm's client, has asked that the name of the corporation is removed from every image, right? So we have to take every logo and every, from behind the reception desk, all that stuff. No, that's
I've
not
been there.
That's not photography, right? So if they want that, that's fine. I understand there's confidentiality problems and they need to show it. Either they can do it, they can remove it, or they can, I'll say, hey, this is, I'm gonna charge you, or I'm gonna quote you, X hours at X rate per hour, and that you can accept it or not. But this was never part of the agreement. So,
and so,
that's the kind of above and beyond stuff that isn't photographic that shouldn't necessarily be happening, but I can understand why it's happening, and that's when we do it. So,
right. And so once your shoot is done, you're licensing your images, right, to other subcontractors or contractors or anyone involved in the project. You're not just sort of working for one client and they pay for everyone and then it's a feeding frenzy.
No, yeah. So my relationship with my clients is a little bit, so to get into the like nuts and bolts of it, I charge a multiple client rate, right? So basically what that means is that my clients can sub-license the images to their, contractors and stuff up to the cost of the photo shoot, or until a year. After a year goes by, I ask them to send it to me, right? So this helps my smaller clients to offset the high cost of a photo shoot, right? Because I charge a good amount of money, and it allows those, younger, smaller people to do it. A lot of the big clients just send me the usage requests anyways. So yeah, I mean, I would say there's at least, I've gotten to a point where I have enough usage requests, people that are third parties buying the images, that I'm working with an old friend of mine who has access to my server, basically, where all my images are stored. And I just kick the usage request to him and pay him an hourly rate to handle it for me, because there's, you know, there's a couple a week every week, and there's a proof sheet going out and then invoices to send and download links to create. So he's doing that. It's great extra, you know, side job for him. And, you know, so yeah.
And you trust this guy to not go into your boudoir shoot folders and screw around or anything?
Those are password protected.
Yeah. So, all right. So we got a bunch of questions here from Instagram that have kind of been curated. And I think, well, let's see if there's anything else in the comments here. There's been some.
Yeah, let's do rapid fire. Like, do you bill the client for food and lunch while working on a shoot? Yeah. From when I leave the door until I get home, everything is billed to the client. Tolls,
so
food,
that's another
mileage,
another wishy-washy thing for me. Sometimes, like, I try to read I work with small clients. Sometimes I'm working with like a husband and wife team, and I'll just be like, I got lunch, like piece of cake.
That's yeah, I do that too. I mean,
and then you bill it. Do you like put it on your card and then bill it?
No. Well, no. If I'm doing it as a gesture, I'm like, hey guys, like thanks for the shoot. Let me lunch is on me. That's not gonna go on there. But the understanding is that like there's like a X number of dollars line item for like food, miscellaneous, whatever during the day, and that $100 never gets used up because we like never eat because we're crazy and we, you know. But I mean, most of the time the client buys the lunch anyways. But yeah, I mean, small potatoes.
Yeah.
What else do we have in the comments down here? How do you structure your contracts? Oh God.
I was just gonna say that one. Yeah.
Oh God.
So I have my contract.
Yeah.
I'll do this really quick because this is a whole video on its own.
Yeah.
But I sent a rate sheet which explains in succinct, but you know, I would say it has some brevity to it. How I work, right? It says here's a day rate. Page 1, day rate, explanation of day rate. Page 2, retouching, explanation of retouching. Page 3, licensing, explanation of licensing. Page 4, travel. Page 5, terms and conditions. Attached to that is the estimate. And I have a line at the bottom that says, I have read and understand the rate sheet and agree to all. And if you want to book me, you have to make a 50% deposit before I book the date. So they will sign and send me the 50% and boom, they're in. Now, I've had a couple problems with that because I don't want to be like a hard-ass machine about my contract. I mean, some things I do, some things I don't. But I get into a situation where my rate sheet says every time you make a picture, you're going to buy the picture. Okay. And what happens is sometimes the client is like zeroed in on a photo on location, and then I deliver 20 pictures, and they're like, "Oh, I don't want to pay for all these. I don't like them." And I'm like, "Well, you said you wanted that when you spent an hour on it, like, and I retouched it. You're buying it." So I just sent my whole thing off to a lawyer to sort of word that in a more straight ahead way, so that because the verbal, like, if it's never going to go to court over one picture or anything, but you want that verbal sort of leniency to be in your favor. And I don't want to be a hard ass about it, but like it should be very clear that if we're going to spend an hour pushing furniture, setting up lights, you know, tweaking, and then I'm going to edit it, you're going to buy the picture, you know? So that's something I've struggled with. Yeah. But that's generally how I do my contract. I don't know about you.
I don't have a contract. Never. No contracts for me. I'll sign contracts if the architects have them after I review them and redline them. But you want me to take pictures of your building, I come and make the pictures. You get them and then you pay me. That's all. And it works. It's worked. I would say my job number is, I'm going to tell you my percentage rate here. I'm on job number for Tom Harris Architectural Photography, job number 451. One time I have not been paid. So, and I have had.
I think I was in my my invoicing software. I think I'm at like 1,353 or something. But a lot of that was real estate, you know, in the early days when I was cranking 2 a day or something. And I think I've only not been paid once or twice.
Yeah.
And half of it was because my fault. I was like, these pictures suck. I can't charge you for this. I had an off day.
Yeah, you know, I just have, like I said, I manage and maintain good relationships with my clients, and I generally they want to work with me again. And if they're late on a thing and they write me an email and they're like, hey, we got a project for you. I'm like, hey, you got an invoice for me, right?
Yeah,
And they're like, oh yeah, shit, we won't be able to pay that.
Right.
They blame it on something. Like, oh, that guy over in payroll really screwed that up. Sorry. But really they just didn't forward it, most of the time. Yeah. But yeah, so, and as far as like, minutia goes, like stuff about they don't buy a picture, like there'll be times where where it's me that like I make a picture and then later the light's better and I'm like, we got to redo this, like the light's better now, like let's do it again, we'll throw that other one in the trash, right? So yeah, I don't know, I just most of the time the clients buy everything. Every once in a while they don't take 2 photos and like whatever, it's a couple $100,
right? But, all right, so what's
2 very different ways, both work.
Should we go over to the Instagram questions?
Yeah, let's do it. Let me pull those up.
All right, you ask me one and then I'll ask you one, and you go from your list, I'll go from mine.
All right, okay, I'll go from my list. All right, first one, who has influenced your approach? Okay, wait, this is from Instagram user named Andy Ryan Photographer. Let's see, we're getting better at this. Who has influenced your approach to your work the most outside of photography? So like, who's influenced your work that isn't a photographer?
Music. I think I've had a huge musical influence in my work. Like I love sort of ambient shoegaze, weird, quiet type of music. And I think my pictures look like that too. They're sort of quiet, symmetrical. I'm a wide angle guy for sure. I love, mist and rain and sort of quiet light in my shots. I think as far as artists go, I love a good, like Dutch painter from the 17th. I don't even know. I can pretend to know, but I don't. But like, if you go to if you go to Amsterdam or something and you go to a museum over there, or you go to, look at the old masterwork painters and stuff, the way that they use light and shadow, like I try to only shoot between like 6 and 10 a.m. and 3 and sunset, because you get that light. And I will try to talk my clients. I mean, we can do like conference rooms and bathrooms and crap like at high noon.
Interior stuff,
There have literally been shoots where my assistant and I and the client have gone and got foot massages for like 2 hours in the middle of the day, because I'm just like, the light's terrible, and I know anything we do now is going to look better later. So yeah, that's I would say music is my number one. Go ahead.
That's great. No, you just brought up something that I want to point out what you said, because I think it's really important, because I think that our audience tonight is probably primarily photographers, right? And you said that your photos, the way you phrased it was perfectly, you're like, my photos look like that, or like, that's how my photos look. I think that's a really important thing to recognize, is your photos should look like your photos, right? Like, you need to develop a style that is like when you look at a bunch of architectural photos of different architectural photographers, oftentimes you can say like, oh, that looks like it was shot by Mike Kelley. That looks like it was shot by Ewan Bond. That looks like it was shot by Tim Griffith, right? Like that looks like it was shot by Kendall McCarty. Like there's a lot of different photographers out there who have a nuanced enough style, no matter what the subject matter is, that you can kind of tell it's theirs. And that's kind of a mark of a good photographer, I think. And developing that style is something that's really important. I had a professor my junior year of college, and that was like her advice to me. It was like, you're far enough along in the technical proficiency stuff that like, I can't teach you all that much more. What you need to work on now is like, what makes your photo look like your photo. And I had like never had that thought before. And I thought that was a really important, like pivotal moment in my education. So just wanted to add to all right, your turn.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay. All right, here we go. This one is from MD. I'm going to butcher this. MD.fotografienne words. I think it's Polish. That's above my pronunciation skill. Can you describe the advantages and disadvantages of photos with or without natural light or flash?
Okay, yes, I can do that. So I would say that every photograph, no matter what the subject matter is, if you're using natural light, has a best moment during the day, right? And Mike and I have had this conversation that like, you can walk around a building and with a client and you can say, you know, we need you to come back here at 3:45. And your client's like, 3:45 though? Like, really? And you're like, yeah, 3:45. Because at 4:14, the light's going to be best, right? So for starters, every photo has a best moment during the day. It has a best moment during the year too, probably, but you don't have that luxury, right? And then, you know, there are many images that are helped by natural or by the inclusion of artificial light. Like I bring some strobes with me. I have a couple of hot lights that I don't generally bring with me anymore, but knowing how to use them in a way that is very, very natural is important. But sometimes you just can't dig spaces out. You can't, by brightening an image, by bracketing the shit out of it and like, you know, dropping in a really light exposure of a dark area, you're never going to get shape. You're never going to get, you know, you're just, everything's mud, right? You're just making the mud brighter. Like you can't get shape on a chair in the back of a little nook in a restaurant if you don't put light on that chair.
Yeah.
So, you know, knowing how to use that light in a way that's, you know, and then that's like a really, really deep river to swim in. Like there is no rules with lighting. Like you can do whatever you want. And if it looks right, it looks right. So, you know, I'm not going to really go into that right now, but there are
other theory conversations.
Yeah. That's why you're an apprentice for 3 years and you assist 6 photographers, because you get to see every way of doing it. So.
All right, we got to pick up the pace. Next question.
Okay, sorry.
Your
Good
turn.
grief. We're long-winded fellas. Danny Bostwick asks, thoughts on transitioning from weddings or portrait photography into architecture?
I would say if you know the business of photography and you've been doing weddings and portraits or whatever, you have an edge on the competition. You know how to deal with people and clients and that sort of thing, but it is a completely different genre of photography. It's almost like learning how to take pictures all over again.
It's like biology versus physics or something, right?
Yes, and likewise, I have people ask me to shoot their wedding, and I'm like, no.
I've got a new kid upstairs. He's 3 months old today. I cannot take a good picture of this kid.
I don't even have the right equipment for it. So
no,
it's, you know, I feel like it would almost take. I strongly believe in specializing. First of all, I don't think someone who's a wedding and portrait and architecture and car photographer is necessarily going to be the best at any of those. You have to, I think you really got to do one thing. And if you want to do architecture, I do think that you're helped by your sort of business background, but I think you have a lot of learning to do. I would, you know, just throw out all your lenses, tilt shift, tripod. You're going to be shooting 20 pictures a day instead of 1,600. It's a paradigm shift. It's the complete opposite spec. You know, if you were a product photographer, I'd say like, oh yeah, very similar. You know, very slow, take your time, methodical type of approach. But weddings and portraits, cold bucket of water. But it's possible. It's a total switch. So
the vocabulary is different, and you're going to be working with a client that expects you to understand the vocabulary of architecture and like design thinking. And being able to speak that language and understand how to like transition what they need to say into photographs is something that's really important.
I don't even know how a wedding flows, and how can I even possibly begin? I would be screwed.
Yeah, it's not impossible, but it's just it's going to take a long time and a lot of work, and you need to be really good at it to be successful.
Yeah. All right, your turn in the hot seat.
I'm ready.
LX.media on Instagram asks, to get the big high-paying jobs, should I sign with a marketing agency or chase clients directly and represent myself?
I think to get big high-paying clients, you need them to come to you. I don't think you need to be chasing anybody, right? You need to develop a body of work that makes them want to work with you. And I don't know anything about ad agency or about what is it about representation, is it?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think one difference between me and you is I feel like I have a wider sort of set of clients.
Sure.
I'll do things from real estate to advertising, you know? Maybe I'm doing a furniture ad, or like I shot for Tesla. I keep milking that one a while ago.
Hopefully they paid you in stock.
I would be retired if they did. Don't make me regret that, man.
No comment. Continue.
And I've been represented. It's like they do this great job of marketing themselves and holding themselves out as like the golden ticket to photography, fame, and fortune. It's not all it's cracked up to be. I've had reps. They might get you a job here and there, but it's nothing that I don't think you can do on your own.
It may be a stepping stone though, right? Like it may be a part, like if you can do it for a year and if it works, you gain some clients, you gain something from it, or you might find out it's no good. But be careful with contracts and stuff though, because
you could have if you were literally turning work away because you were so busy, a rep could get you even better clients. But if you have gaps in your schedule already, I think there's a lot of work you can do to improve your clientele on your own. All right, moving on.
I'm ready. I'm making this text bigger so I can read it. Kovalian MD asks, what was your first piece of equipment? And I think we should go back to the beginning, like your first piece of camera equipment. I want to know.
First ever. It was a 2.3 megapixel Kodak.
Yes.
Point and shoot.
Yes,
I got it in 2004, maybe like 03, 04, 05, and it had the built-in flash and a little wrist strap. It was silver.
What did it shoot to?
Oh, like a 16 megabyte CF card or something.
Nice.
Yeah.
I can do you one better. My dad worked for 3M and he worked for the pharmaceutical division, and they had like one of those booths at a convention or whatever, and they had like a digital camera, right? It was a Sony Mavica. It shot to floppy disks. Right. So I used to tromp around my hometown with a whole grip of floppy disks. Right. I had them color coded. So I would go from the front to the back and shoot my 1.44 megabyte floppy disks. I could get like 3 JPEGs on each one there because they were like 320 by 480. What was the aspect ratio? 240 by 480 or something? So tiny.
Something like that. Yeah.
So good, man.
It's like a thumbnail.
You'd like shoot it and then it would be like, it would take like, seconds to record it too.
That's like shooting film. It's like,
it was dope. It was dope.
Yeah.
It's like shooting film, but shooting a piece of film that's like that big, right?
If you still have that, you should shoot with it today.
I wish I had it. I should, yeah. I don't.
Funny.
Right, moving on.
Patrick Biller, what is an average yield of final images from a full day shoot?
I would say I used to be 15. Now I'm closer to maybe 20 to 20 if it's a summer day.
Yeah.
And there's some exteriors involved. If it's all interiors, it's hard to be 15 because they take longer. You got to light them.
It's touching and moving and
yeah.
And
fussing. So much fussing.
I got one more for you. My yield is, I would say 20 to 30 if I'm cranking and the home is perfect.
I've done 30 as well, but it's rare.
Yeah. If it's a high rise, it's maybe like 10 to 15, half the day is spent by walking around. How much do you need? This is a question for you. I'm usurping you here.
Off script,
how much G Brito, right? How much do you need to know about architecture to photograph it, and what do you need to know, if anything?
I think, to be honest, you should know a good deal. You should be interested in it. It should be, a passion that doesn't have to be as high as photography, but you really should know your market well.
Speak the language, if you go out to lunch with an architect, you should be able to talk about cantilevers and chamfers and coins and all that stuff.
Yeah. Or at the very least, you should be able to talk about the state of the art of architecture, if you want to say it that way. Like you should be able to speak about like, oh, did you see that new building that's going up over on the Sal? Like it looks like Pickard Children's doing that. It looks really nice. That kind
of your favorite architects and some local people. And,
but ultimately, like what I think is interesting is we end up being the people in town that know the most ultimately about the current architecture because we see it all right when it happens. So oftentimes when I get on a shoot with an architect, the first thing they say is like, what have you shot that's cool recently? Like what do I need to see? Because like they know that you've been in the 6 recent, towers that have gone up and you saw the new, project in 333, LaSalle or whatever. So Yeah, you need to be passionate about it, and you should know a lot about it, you know.
Your turn.
Okay.
We'll do 2 or 3 more, right?
Yeah, Howie LK, an old friend of mine, he asked, will you take a job that captures objectively bad architecture?
How much are you paying me? You know, yeah, I think that would be...
It kind of falls into what you were talking about earlier with one good picture, right?
I think that would almost be fun, but what is objectively bad architecture? Even if it's a tract home, like there are people who make incredible photos of objectively bad architecture, like Andreas Gursky, one of the greatest fine art photographers of all time, who will do these aerial shoots of tract homes in like Fort Myers, Florida, or something. And it's wonderful. Just like, oh my God.
To be Gursky.
I'll shoot anything. I will shoot porta potties. I'll shoot anything once.
I would agree with that. Yeah. What I would say, I think almost like a more interesting question is like, where I would draw the line is not the architecture. It's like the organization. Like there are probably lines I would draw where I wouldn't want to further their mission. You know what I mean? Like there are,
yeah.
We don't need to say, I'm not going to say any more words because I'm going to alienate somebody, but you know, there's definitely like organizations that I don't want to photograph because I don't believe in their mission.
You don't, yeah,
exactly.
I agree.
That's where I would draw. I would say I'm going to pass on this one. Thank you.
But I think I think most structures have some redeeming quality in some context.
Yes.
Whether it's make this thing interesting or beautiful or just say something about it. You know what I mean?
If nothing else, it's a cube in space that has light on it and you can make it into a photographic exercise rather than an architectural one, right?
And I also think the intent of the photographs is an important thing to consider as well. So, but this is another hour-long question. But all right, let's do 2 more and then we'll wrap it up.
2 more. Okay. Whose turn is it? I can't remember. I'll ask you. All right. Does posting your work on social media help you get connected? Asks Sarah Vilichu.
I'm going to say yes and no. I might get some hate for this. I almost feel like my Instagram is too big to be effective. The amount of reach that I get, I have 50-something odd thousand followers. Most of the people I'm hitting are people in Russia or somewhere completely. I would rather have 500 architects than 55,000 whatevers. But like we live in this weird world where people are like, oh my God, blue check, he must be amazing.
Blue check,
you know Mike. What I'm saying?
Blue check, Mikey.
But frankly, I don't. I like the attention. I'm not gonna lie, like it feels good. Like when I post something and everyone sends me the laugh emoji, it's fun. But I don't really feel like I get a lot of work from it. I feel like I get more respect from photographers for the following I've built than work from Instagram. I feel like where I get work is when my work is published and my name, my byline is under the photo, or when my clients post their photos on Instagram or on their website and see photo by Mike Kelley. I don't really get squat from my own Instagram because it's just who can scream the loudest. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I kind of think there's a tier, right? Like you grow it and then it becomes useful and then it won't be any more useful beyond that, kind of, right? Like what's the difference between 50,000 and 500,000 followers for architecture? Like, I don't know. Yeah, I would say that I know I've probably gotten 2 jobs total that they were like, hey, I saw your work. I've been seeing what you've been up to on Instagram. I know that there are architects who are in the community and they like know my name otherwise, but like I can remember 2 times where they targeted. I use it more as a community where I like to like chat with other photographers like you and people about architecture. That's what's fun for me.
Yeah.
All right. Got one more for me?
Last one. We got a great one here.
All right.
And I think we should both answer this.
Great.
If you could go back to the start of your career, what would you do? What would you do differently?
Buy Tesla stock, right?
And that's from Kimberly Elliott
on
Instagram.
Okay. Nice. Kimberly Elliott. Let's think. What would I do differently if I could go back to the beginning? Oh man, I like to try to not have regrets, and this seems like it's falling into that category. But
yeah, I don't think I have any regrets about it. I think I definitely approach things differently, though.
You would? Okay. I don't know, man. You go first. Let me think.
I feel like I would have tried to learn more about architecture quicker.
Okay.
I feel like I had a lot of one-off clients at the beginning, and they're like, this guy has no idea what he's doing or talking about. I mean, the pictures are great, but he just doesn't know anything about architecture. But we told him where to put the camera. So, and I feel like it took me a good 4 years to really like, but I had also the passion for architecture had to be developed.
Yeah.
I had no interest in it when I started shooting it.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a thing. It was a means to a paycheck for me. Mm-hmm. And it was a fun job. It was a cool job, but I didn't know anything about it. And I had to, by being exposed to it, I became sort of enamored with it. And I wish that had happened earlier. I wish I had maybe even just bought like Architecture for Dummies on day one and just like learned the lingo, learned where to follow architecture, that sort of thing. That's my regret.
Okay, I've thought of one. I was taught that to be a successful photographer, who you can define that any way you want, but to be a successful photographer who shoots for clients and makes money, you need to be 3 things. It's like a tripod, right? You need to be a good photographer, which is only 1/3 of the puzzle. The other 2/3 are that you need to be a well-rounded person who people want to work with. Mm-hmm. And you need to get the other stuff done every time. And it has to be good, right? Like you got to answer emails. You got to show up for the scout. You got to know the process. You got to get it done on time, and you got to deliver it. You got to do all that stuff, right? Which is not doing the composing in the field. And I will say that I think that my still weak spot is that third leg in the, I wish back in the beginning I would have like set up a workflow where every night at 8 p.m. I sit down and I catch up on my emails and I do this and I do that, right? Like it's just when you're out there and you're working 6 days in a row or 10 days in a row or even 2 big long days, like all you want to do when you get home is go to bed because you've been working for 16 hours, and like stuff gets forgotten about. And I feel really bad when somebody emails me and I look back and there's an email from 4 months ago that I just like, this thing's like great, but it's also a problem because I'm in the field and at 10:30 a.m. after I've been working for 7 hours already, I flip it open. I'm like, oh, I'll have to get back to that later. Boom. I close it. I never see it again.
You forget. Well,
okay. You forget because there's like a lot of stuff.
Have I got an answer for you? I'm going to sound like a shill. I use an email client called Superhuman. Mm-hmm. And I used to have the same problem all the time. I would see a text or a phone call or something or an email while I'm getting lunch, I'm driving, I'm doing whatever. And I'd forget. And it would be like, hey, we want a quote on a job. And I'd be like, oh, awesome. And then 9 p.m., I want nothing more than to be in bed. And then I got like 3 more shoots that week or something. And I just never get back to it. And by the time I remember, they hire someone else.
Yeah, exactly. And that's just lost money. Yeah.
Yeah, I use this program called Superhuman. It allows you to set reminders and instantly like swipe left, and it will remind you tomorrow. And it will nag you until you reply, and makes you do something with every single email that you have until everything has been actioned off. And so that sort of immensely has helped me. I can set a reminder, follow up in 6 months, and 6 months later, it's like, oh, that license is expiring. Let me chase that one up and make sure I see it. Do they want to renew it? Boom, $500 because I just, followed up. Yeah.
I just emailed it to myself because I don't have that program and I won't remember it when I'm done with this because I got to go eat waffles in the kitchen. My wife made waffles at 9
smells
p.m.
and sounds. I wish I could smell it, but it sounds delicious.
I got her a waffle iron for Christmas, super old one because it's like
awesome.
It's like it should be it should be banned. It's like dangerous and you can burn yourself, but they're crispy.
Legitimate waffles, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's a wrap on tonight, guys. Thank you so much,
Kelley, everybody.
Tom Harris, if you want to learn more about this incredibly talented and very nice gentleman, you can go to his website, tom-harris.net, or just Google Tom Harris Photography, and he's the one in Chicago with the good pictures. I'm sure it'll come right up. Thank you guys for tuning in. Hopefully we can do some more of these. It's been a real pleasure having you, Tom. Thanks for your time.
It's been great. Thanks everyone for the questions too. They've been so great. And hello to everyone out there watching. It's been a really, really fun night talking about photography. It's really easy to talk shop with you, Mike. So I appreciate it.
Well, I'm glad that you came out and you chose to spend your day after Christmas, Boxing Day, with me. You know, we were all fat and happy and had a great chat. So
waffles.
Everyone, thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you soon. Have a good night.
Night, everybody.
Okay. I think we're off the stream. I ended it. Okay.